5 signs that you are currently going through a masculine awakening. In this video, mate, I'm talking about what a masculine awakening is, what triggers a masculine awakening. I'm going to give you the 5 signs as well that you're currently going through this process, and by the end of the video, you'll be able to realize that maybe you are going through this process, maybe you're further along than you thought, and you're going to be able to see that this is actually a process that's healthy, that's necessary, that's going to lead to an amazing life in the future, better relationships, more fulfilling relationships, more authentic connections with the people in your life, and essentially a life that's more interesting, a place where you feel a sense of inner peace in your day-to-day and self-respect. And if we've never met before, mate, my name is Oliver. I'm a coach, I'm a writer, I'm a retreat leader, and on this channel I help men overcome people-pleasing, build deep confidence, and attract and create great relationships with women. So what is a masculine awakening? Let's talk about that first. So a masculine awakening is what I would call a kind of psycho-spiritual process that triggers in a man, usually at the onset of some sort of painful experience like a breakup, possibly a job loss, but it's usually in relationship to, well, a relationship. My masculine awakening, for example, it started at the onset of a breakup. I was dumped, she was also cheating on me. It was a very, very toxic kind of dynamic. And that breakup was so painful that it caused me to then reflect. And I noticed throughout the course of that relationship that what I contributed negatively to the dynamic was essentially in large part because I wasn't bringing qualities of leadership, assertiveness, authenticity. I wasn't bringing a sense of direction, stability, structure, safety, all the kind of healthy things that a healthy masculinity can provide to a relationship. I really wasn't bringing any of that. And it's not as if I was, it just wasn't in my character. I later come to realize it was actually a part of me that I was holding back and repressing because of past wounding, basically. So that's what triggered my masculine awakening. So when this triggers in you, it's basically it's previously repressed masculine energy that's coming through the surface, and it's demanding to be integrated in your life, in your behavior, in the way that you show up in the world. And it's a very healthy process, but it can be quite bumpy. Okay, I'm just going to warn you about that. So let's dive into the 5 signs then that you're currently going through a masculine awakening. So the first sign, mate, you might notice is that you're starting to crave the approval and validation and attention of women a lot less. So before, you were basically playing out what is otherwise known as the mother complex. You were playing this out in your dynamics with people. Because you attached to the mother when you were younger, not all of you did, by the way, but like it happens quite commonly, then you're sort of replaying through what Freud called a repetition compulsion, the same dynamic in your adult life. You're seeking the comfort that your mother gave you when you were younger. You're not doing it consciously, it's all like an unconscious thing. So this is what you're doing in your life. But when you go through a masculine awakening, you start to see the absurdity of it. You start to see that craving female validation is actually a childhood survival strategy. So a masculine awakening is essentially you growing up psychologically. It's you moving past the childhood coping strategies that you adopted to survive, and you start to feel far more grounded in yourself. So, for example, you don't follow up with a shitload of texts to a woman. You start communicating way more confidently. You start talking authentically with women. You start feeling a lot more confident and far less anxious in the presence of women, even beautiful women. You're starting to notice this now. You've shifted from how can I impress her to is this the kind of woman I want in my life? You've taken women essentially off the pedestal. Men who haven't gone through this process basically want approval from literally any woman, regardless of her values, principles, goals, etc. It's just validation, it's like a drug. The second sign is that you're starting to blame others a lot less. You're starting to release any sense of inner victim, and you're starting to take painful responsibility. And I say painful because taking responsibility for your life is a challenging thing to do. It's why children tend to avoid it, because children want pleasure in the immediate. They want short-term gratification right now. But as you start to go through a masculine awakening, you start to see that you are the creator of your entire life. The things that you are consistently putting up with, they create results, and those results are what you created by putting up with it. That means relationships, that means jobs, that means income, that means your physique and your health. All of this stuff is you are the creator of all of it. So when you start taking full responsibility for this stuff, you start feeling more powerful, strong, grounded, capable, competent. You start trusting yourself a lot more. But in order to get there, you have to also face the truth, the reality that, yeah, I have created this. The third sign that you're going through a masculine awakening, mate, is you're starting to choose depth and growth over comfort and pleasure. One of the key characteristics of masculine energy is challenge, risk-taking, purpose, right? Discipline, direction. When masculine energy is not integrated in your system, you essentially, all of these traits are dormant in you. They've not been brought to the surface yet. So that means that in the absence of all of that stuff, in the absence of finding your sense of purpose in this world and going for it, you are now left with short-term gratification sources, which in this world there are countless. Porn, scrolling, video games, all that kind of stuff. You were choosing short-term pleasure because there was no alternative. But when you go through a masculine awakening, what happens is you start to crave depth. You start to see through the illusion of short-term comfort. You start to see that this short-term comfort, it never gets there. It never actually feeds you. It never nourishes you. It never fulfills you genuinely. You start to refuse to go along this addiction cycle. You start to break through and start to really crave and ask yourself the question, why am I here and in service to what? The childhood ego starts to take a backseat and your greater purpose starts to come through. Instead of going out and getting drunk with your friends, you're building a business maybe that serves other people. You're reading books, you're improving, you're chasing your goals in your health and with your body. You're seeking deeper connections instead of these kind of short-term, hi, I'm good, how are you doing, how's the weather kind of thing. You're seeking depth of experience. The fourth sign that you're currently going through a masculine awakening is what I would call anxiety with an undercurrent of peace. So pre-awakening, what you were basically doing was trying to deal with a whole wellspring of repressed emotion with all these kind of distraction tactics I talked about in the previous point. And this in itself led to, not only do you experience anxiety, an emotion that was kind of just under the surface, but you also had this kind of chasing, where you were all that repressed emotion was chasing you around and it was causing you like a secondary kind of pain. But when you go through a sense of masculine awakening, a process like this, what actually starts happening is you stop running and you turn towards the stuff that was chasing you, all that repressed emotion, all the pain, all the struggle, all that kind of stuff that's been puppeting your life, like puppet strings in the background, that's been running your life, all the fears, all the anxieties, all the repressed stuff. You turn towards it and you start feeling it. And you notice that it's in your system, the pain is like coming up, the emotions are coming up, but you're noticing that you're now growing through it. You now have this kind of building self-trust because you're like, well, I can handle this. And if I can handle this, I can handle anything. You start to see there's a possibility of you creating a completely different life and being a completely different person because you're no longer just repeating the same cycle that you've been repeating for the past like 10, 20 years or whatever. So there is a peace that lies underneath all of this, that comes from you facing and being with your emotions. And the fifth sign that I noticed in myself, that I've also noticed in many of my clients, is you start to become far more decisive. Whereas previously, because you didn't have the masculine energy integrated, of saying, right, we're going to go here, I can handle the consequences no matter what they are, let's go. When you start to integrate this energy, you start to become way more decisive. This means you're starting to take the lead on dates. I'll see you at 8 o'clock at this time, etc. 8 o'clock at this place, sorry. You start to make plans with friends. You start to be a lot more proactive in your life and be way less passive. And that's because you're no longer afraid of making the wrong decision. You're no longer afraid of the anxiety that comes from upsetting people with the wrong decision and all this other stuff. You're basically learning to hold yourself, hold your own emotions more, which makes you far more decisive. So these signs today, mate, they came from not only my own life, but they also came from clients that I work with through the Pleaser to Leader program. It's a 12-week process where we're going to help you work together privately every single week on applying the framework that I've crafted to help you go from being a people pleaser to a confident leader in your dating life, your relationships, and in your life as a whole. So if you're interested in that, mate, click the link in the pinned comment down below, look at the page, see if it suits you, jump on a free call with me, we'll talk about it and see where we go from there. I'm gonna go get a cup of tea and chill out for an hour before my next coaching session, mate, and I will see you in the next video. Stay courageous.